So I wanted, before we get started, to let everyone know that I have a new podcast out, and it's called Meditations. If you like the Meditations segment of this current podcast, you'll like the Meditations podcast. It's nothing but 20 minutes of meditative sounds. And now, on with the podcast.
Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate. Just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
Last week I helped my friend stay put. It's a lot easier than helping someone move.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, Trump Tuesday, May the 20th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the headlines, patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, and Donald Trump. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now the headlines for Tuesday, May the 20th. CBS News CEO resigns as network collapses. Democrat Maryland Governor Wes Moore has just vetoed a bill that would have advanced reparations for blacks. Trump receives a massive standing ovation at the Kennedy Center board dinner. Steve Bannon calls for a full seizure of Biden's Walter Reed medical files. Feminists warn young girls against marrying rich, muscular football stars who love them and take care of all their needs and praise them in speeches. Trump's education department rescinds Biden's $37 million fine on Christian University. The Department of Health and Human Services said on Monday that it was terminating $60 million in federal grants to Harvard University. President Trump arrives on Capitol Hill to meet with Republicans about the One Big Beautiful Bill. Supreme Court strips 350,000 Venezuelans from deportation protection. And those are the headlines for Tuesday, May the 20th. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the political corner.
The One Big Beautiful Bill passed the House Budget Committee last night, bringing it one step closer to final passage. The One Big Beautiful Bill is perfectly named because it represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver on the Make America Great Again agenda responsible for President Trump's landslide victory on November 5th. The America First policies in this bill are the reason why Republicans currently have the majority in Congress right now. Passing this bill is what voters sent Republicans to Washington to accomplish. And that's why it's essential that every Republican in the House and the Senate unites behind President Trump and passes this popular and essential legislative package. This bill will be the single most pro-small business, pro-family, and pro-American worker legislation ever. This bill will give Americans the largest tax cuts in our nation's history.
And that was the political corner. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the patriotic short.
Destroyers and frigates are both types of warships commonly found in naval fleets. Frigates are generally smaller, faster, and less heavily armed. They primarily escort and protect other ships from submarines and aircraft. On the other hand, destroyers are larger, more heavily armed, and designed for various offensive operations. These operations include anti-aircraft, anti-submarine, and surface warfare. Destroyers come in a range of sizes. Smaller destroyers, like the Royal Navy's Type 45 Daring class, measure around 150 meters in length. Some nations, such as Spain, officially have no destroyers, although many of their frigate ships are almost identical to what other countries would classify as a destroyer vessels. In summary, frigates are more common, smaller, and primarily focused on escort duties, while destroyers are larger, heavily armed, and versatile in offensive capabilities.
And that was the patriotic short. Back in a minute.
Every day in Africa, in the safari, a lion wakes up. And every single day in the safari, a gazelle wakes up. Now, this is critical. What's the difference between a gazelle and what's the difference between a lion? What I discovered is the gazelle is running from something. So as long as the lion is chasing the gazelle is running. But as soon as the lion stops chasing the gazelle, it stops. And that's a lot of you in this room. You will run. you'll do what you're supposed to do. As long as you're getting pushed, as long as you're getting motivated, as long as somebody is encouraging you, as long as somebody's coaching you, as long as somebody's pushing you, as long as somebody's prodding you, you're doing what you're supposed to do. As long as somebody's calling you, as long as someone is enticing you, as long as somebody's giving you rewards, you're moving. But as soon as that stops, you stop. I asked myself the question about the lion, and I said the lion is not running to be rewarded. The lion is running to eat. Because the lion realizes when he kills the gazelle, not only does he eat the gazelle, but he brings it back home. So you've got to ask yourself, what's your why? What motivates you? What pushes you? What drives you? And if that thing is internal, if nobody has to call you, if nobody has to prod you, if nobody has to reward you, if you are self-motivated and self-regulated, you can have it, you can be it, you can do it. When you are a true hunter, you don't go by time, you go by the gazelle. You don't hunt from 8 to 3. Why? Because the gazelle may not be open from 8 to 3. You hunt until you get a gazelle, and you don't stop until you get one. And then you get another, and then you get another, and you get another. Listen to me, a 9 to 5 person, they make a sale, and they're excited. When you get to my level and you get one thing, then you try to get to the next level, then you try to get to the next level, then you try to get to the next level. A true hunter hunts. A true hunter's goal is not the prize. A true hunter's goal is to hunt. That's what they live for. They live to hunt. They don't just live to catch it. It's the whole process. I'm saying that some of you in this room, you might not be a lion yet. You might have small beginnings. You might not have a lot of money. You might not have a lot of resources, but there's no excuse. And I need you to understand, for those of you who are 70% beast mode, 30% gazelle, that's just enough for that other person to outdo you. I am not phenomenally skilled, but I'm phenomenally willed. My IQ may never change, but my will changes every year. I get stronger and stronger and more determined. Why? Because it's in my DNA. I want to be successful. I want to execute. I want to make all my dreams become a reality. I want to do everything I said I'm going to do. So my appetite increases. It gets stronger every year. I want more every year. I want to do more every year. I want to help more every year. I want to be bolder. I want to be better. I want to be stronger every single year. Every single year, your appetite should go up. You should never get settled. You should never get settled. You should never get content. Every single year.
The waiting and the thinking and the planning, that stuff doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't move you forward. In fact, you're going backwards. You're going backwards because the world is moving forward. So if you're standing still, you're actually going backwards. So don't sit around and think about it anymore. Take action. I don't care how small it is. I don't care how minuscule the movement is, but make movement. Move forward and do that every single day, no matter what.
Be what it is you claim to be about. Be what it is you truly want to be. If you truly want to be successful, if you truly want to change your life, if you truly want to lose 50, 100, 200, 500 pounds, be about it today.
This is not a year that you're going to be doing a lot of talking. This is the year for grinding. This is not the year of dreaming. We're not dreaming no more. We're not wishing no more. We're not watching other people ride the ride no more. We're not watching people cash checks no more. We're not doing that no more. This is our year. Many of you will not be successful because you've got this giant goal and no steps to go with it. You're just in your mind like, girl, this is my year. How many steps? I don't know. Like, what is it going to take me to do it? I don't know. I just know this is my year.
All of us in life have things we want. We don't get what we want. We get what we have to have. We all get what we tolerate in ourselves and other people. But when you're no longer willing to tolerate something, that's when your life changes. The difference in people is their standards, period. Everyone in the world has a list of things they think they should do. I should lose weight. I should work out. I should work harder. I should make more calls. I should.
Memorial Day weekend deals have arrived at Ashley. Now through Memorial Day Monday.
I should. And then you know what? People don't do their shoulds, and they get mad at themselves, and they what I call shit all over themselves. They beat themselves up about it. What changes people is when your should becomes a must.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you, and now a little bit of meditation. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the Daily Stoic.
What would less look like? Let us get used to dining out without the crowds, to being a slave to fewer slaves, to getting clothes only for their real purpose, and to living in more modest quarters. Seneca, on Tranquility of Mind, 9.3b. The writer Stefan Zweig, known for his Stoic-esque wisdom, was at one point one of the best-selling authors in the world, only to have his life destroyed by the rise of Hitler. It's a sad yet timeless rhythm of history. Politicians are run out of office for taking a stand we later recognize as courageous. Countless hard-working and prosperous couples have their money stolen by financial crooks. Someone is accused of a crime but not vindicated until years later. At any moment, we may be toppled from our perch and made to do with less money, less recognition, less access, less resources. Even the lesses that come with age, less mobility, less energy, less freedom. But we can prepare for that in some way by familiarizing ourselves with what that might feel like. One way to protect yourself from the swings of fate and from the emotional vertigo that can result is by living within your means now. So today, we can try to get used to having and surviving on less, so that if we are ever forced to have less, it would not be so bad.
And that was the Daily Stoic. And now, His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron.
Our job in the wider society is to be a leaven and a light and a direction. Modernity wants to make religion into a private matter. So it's like a hobby. It's like something I cultivate in my privacy. But that's not biblical at all. In the Bible, the purpose of being a Christian is to be a light for others, is to be leaven for others, is to be salt, which preserves what's worth preserving, salt that puts to death what should be put to death. That our lives are other-directed. We have a function precisely in the society. The irony is that we tend to think of religion as, well, that's not about politics and economics and society. It's about what you do in your privacy. No. We're a city on a hill. You don't hide the city on the hill. You make it more visible, right? So that's the role of Christians, is to be a sign of contradiction, a sign of direction. We exist precisely for the wider society.
And that was His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron. And now, the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, "The moral justification of capitalism lies in the fact that it is the only system consonant with man's rational nature, that it protects man's survival qua man, and that its ruling principle is justice." Unquote. And that was Ayn Rand from the book, or the chapter, What is Capitalism, from the book, Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, gaslighting.
Let's get to the 21 most common phrases that if you're hearing these, you want to pay attention. All right? So keep this list with you. The first one is, you're being paranoid. You're overreacting. That never happened. You're making that up. You have always been crazy. Oh, God, we've heard that, haven't we? Like, that just makes your skin crawl. Or this one. I don't know what you want me to say. It's your fault. Everyone agrees with me. It was a joke. Can't you just take a joke? How dare you accuse me of doing that? Why can't you be more like, and then fill in the blank. They'll use that of, why can't you be more like your sister, your mother, my sister, my mother? I can't have any negative emotions around you.
Explain gaslighting a little more. What does that look like?
Gaslighting.
Thank you very much. Let's see, Maria, then Stu.
Yeah, it looks like they are just pulling up at the Capitol. There's the beast, we think, President Trump's vehicle, and the Secret Service with him pulling up to the Capitol building. He's going to be speaking at 9 a.m. Let's see if the president emerges here as we wait for President Trump to get to the Capitol to make his remarks, to try to unify the GOP around getting the big, beautiful bill across the finish line and out of the House before Memorial Day, which, of course, is coming up this weekend. Mark Tepper, final thoughts here? Quick.
So Kevin Hassett's 4% GDP growth projection for the second half of the year, I don't think that's far off. I can actually get on board with that because if you think about it, a lot of the Main Street CEOs who had big growth plans heading into this year, who have been in wait-and-see mode, they're not flushing those growth plans down the toilet. They are just going to postpone them into future quarters. They will get done. I expect a rebound.
That would be so huge after all the hysteria over the tariff, Cheryl.
You know, Maria, real quick, Aisha Hassie is reporting that the mood on Capitol Hill among Republicans is tense. Back to you. All
right, we got to go. See you tomorrow, everybody. Mark Tepper, Tiffany Smiley, Cheryl Casoni, Varney and Company picks it up. Stu, take it away.
Good morning, Maria. Good morning, everyone. The president is on Capitol Hill banging heads, or he's about to bang heads, to get all the votes he needs for his big, beautiful bill. With a razor-thin GOP majority in the House, he can't afford to lose any votes. It will be a struggle. The House is divided on debt, SALT, Medicaid eligibility, and much more. Now, this is a test of Trump's control of the party. We expect him to answer questions after the meeting. You will see it. There's the president entering Capitol Hill. One thing the president has going for him is a new Harvard-Harris poll that shows his approval rating at a solid 47%, despite all the negative publicity surrounding tariffs. As for stocks, they're flat to a bit lower this morning after Monday's modest gains. We have the Dow showing a gain of a loss of about 21 points. Similar losses in the S&P and in the Nasdaq. Now, interest rates, they are down from where they were this time yesterday. The 10-year yields just below 4.5% at right, almost at 4.5%, and the 2-year is just below the 4% level. And then there's this. The stablecoin bill cleared a hurdle in the Senate. There was bipartisan support to create a regulatory framework for stablecoin payments, a win for the crypto industry. Bitcoin, on that news, actually it's down ever so slightly this morning, but it's at 104,800. Politics. Trump says progress has been made, his words, with Putin after Monday's phone call. We're going to listen in right now to the president.
Not luck. We have tremendous talent. This man has done an incredible job as Speaker. You know, we had a majority of 1. We were 1 heart attack away from losing the House, okay? Now we have 7. That's a big, because we won some elections, as you probably noticed, and we're going to win a lot of elections. We have an economy that's roaring. We took out $5.1 billion. If you take a look, $5.1 trillion with a T, not a B. $5.1 trillion out of the Middle East. They're investing more than that. It's going to be ultimately more than that. With 180 wide-body Boeing aircraft. They're spending money at levels that nobody's ever seen. Usually a president goes for a trip and he loses money. In other words, he gives money. We went for a trip and we took out $5.1 trillion. Nobody has ever seen anything like it. And that's just the beginning. So I think we're a very unified party. The Senate's doing great. John Thune is doing fantastically. He's a great guy. And we're going to have a bill, the one big, beautiful bill. I think it's going to be, it's the biggest bill ever passed, and we got to get it done. Tremendous tax cuts for people, tremendous incentives, tremendous regulation cuts, all these regulations that are so horrible. And now you find out what happened, because Biden, look, it's a very sad thing what happened, but we're going to start looking into this whole thing with who signed this legislation. Who signed legislation opening our border? I don't think he knew. I said there's nobody that can want to know.
Well, enough of that. So anyways, that's I can't believe that Stu showed up for work today. He missed an opportunity to take the day off. Anyhow, that was Maria Bartiromo, Stu Varney, Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Back in a minute.
Thank you. And now from a book that's called Good Inside. What's the opposite of understanding? For this argument's sake, it's convincing. Convincing is the attempt to prove a singular reality, to prove that only one thing is true. Convincing is an attempt to be right, and as a result make the other person wrong. It rests on the assumption that there's only one correct viewpoint. And then my question is this supposed to be convincing? Further, convincing has one goal in mind, being right. And here's the unfortunate consequence of being right. The other person feels unseen and unheard, at which point most people become infuriated and combative, because it feels as if the other person does not accept your realness or worth. Feeling unseen and unheard makes connection impossible. Understanding two things are true and convincing one thing is true are diametrically opposed ways of approaching other people, so a powerful first step in any interaction is to notice which mode you're in. When you're in one thing is true mode, you're judgmental of and reactive to someone else's experience because it feels like an assault on your own truth. As a result, you will seek to prove your own point of view, which in turn makes the other person defensive because they need to uphold the realness of their experience. In one thing is true mode, exchanges escalate quickly. Each person thinks they're arguing about the content of the conversation when in fact they're trying to defend that they are a real, worthy person with a real, truthful experience. And again, is this convincing? Back in a minute.
Thank you. Now, what does the phrase, if you're explaining, you're losing, mean? This was said by Ronald Reagan, speaking of political campaigns. From the perspective of your audience, if you have to explain yourself, you come off looking desperate to convince. As a consequence, you lose the high ground. From a more philosophical perspective, if you have a clear conscience and strong conviction towards the positions you take, your values, truth, and direction, you don't need the opinions or consent of others. As a consequence, you don't need to explain yourself. However, if you yourself are not convinced of the validity and truth of your position, or you can't fully justify your choices, then you continue to expel words, in an attempt to create the illusion of certainty. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, psychopolitics.
8. Friendly Big Brother. Newspeak is the name for the ideal language in George Orwell's surveillance state. It is meant to supplant old speak entirely. Newspeak has only one goal: to restrict room for thinking freely. Every year, words decrease in number, and the space for conscious thought diminishes. Syme, a friend of 1984's hero, Winston, raves about the beauty of destroying words. Thought crimes, he enthuses, will be made impossible when the words necessary for them are struck from the lexicon. In the process, the notion of freedom will be abolished too. On this score, Orwell's surveillance state differs fundamentally from the world of the digital panopticon, which uses freedom to excess. Today's society of information is not characterized by destroying words, but by multiplying them without end. The spirit of the Cold War and the negativity of enmity dominate Orwell's novel. The country it describes is in a state of permanent war. Julia, Winston's love interest, speculates that the bombs raining down on London every day have been launched by Big Brother and the party in order to maintain fear and terror in the populace. The enemy of the people is called Emmanuel Goldstein. He commands a network of underground conspirators seeking to overthrow the government. Big Brother is at ideological war with Goldstein. 2 Minutes Hate, broadcast daily on the telescreen, takes aim at Goldstein. In the Ministry of Truth, in fact a ministry of lies, the past is revised and fitted to ideology. Orwell's surveillance state employs the psychotechnical methods of brainwashing, electroshock, sleep deprivation, solitary confinement, drugs, and physical torture. The Ministry of Plenty, Newspeak, Mini Plenty, sees to it that consumer goods are always lacking, so that an artificial state of need may be maintained. Orwell's surveillance state, with its telescreens and torture chambers, is fundamentally different from today's digital panopticon, with its internet, smartphones, and Google Glass. In the digital panopticon, the illusion of limitless freedom and communication predominates. Here there is no torture, just tweets and posts, nor is there a mysterious Ministry of Truth. Transparency and information have taken the place of truth. The new conception of power does not involve controlling the past, but steering the future psychopolitically. The neoliberal technology of power does not prohibit, protect, or repress. Instead, it prospects, permits, and projects. Consumption is not held in check, but maximized. No production of scarcity occurs. Instead, surplus is generated. Indeed, a superabundance of positivity. Everyone is encouraged to communicate and consume. The principle of negativity, which still defined Orwell's state, has yielded to the principle of positivity. Needs are not repressed, but stimulated. Confession obtained by force has been replaced by voluntary disclosure. Smartphones have been substituted for torture chambers. Big Brother now wears a friendly face. His friendliness is what makes surveillance so efficient. Bentham's Big Brother was invisible, but he was everywhere in prisoners' minds. Inmates interiorized him. In contrast, the inhabitants of today's digital panopticon never really feel that they are being watched or threatened. Consequently, surveillance state is an imprecise name for describing the digital panopticon. Here, everyone feels free. However, precisely this feeling of freedom, which is nowhere to be found in Orwell's state, is now the problem. The digital panopticon thrives on its occupants' voluntary self-exposure. Self-exploitation and self-illumination follow the same logic. In either case, freedom is exploited. The digital panopticon lacks a Big Brother wresting information from us against our will. Instead, we lay ourselves bare voluntarily. The advertisement that Apple aired during the 1984 Super Bowl has become the stuff of legend. In it, the company presented itself as a force of liberation, which would counter the Orwellian surveillance state. In lockstep, listless workers, evidently without a will of their own, march into a vast hall and listen to Big Brother's fanatical declamations on the telescreen. Then the ad shows a woman rushing into the assembly hall, the thought police in hot pursuit. Bearing a sledgehammer before her heaving breast, she dashes forward. Full of resolve, she runs straight up to Big Brother and throws the sledgehammer at the telescreen with all the force she can muster. It explodes in a dazzling burst of light. The assembled workers promptly awaken from their torpor. A voice declares, on January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984. But despite Apple's message, 1984 did not signal the end of the surveillance state, so much as the inception of a new kind of controlled society, one whose operations surpassed the Orwellian state by leaps and bounds. Now, communication and control have become one, without remainder. Now, everyone is his or her own panopticon.
And that was Chapter 8, The Big Brother, from Psychopolitics by Byung-Chul Han, Neoliberalism and New Technologies of Power. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Jordan Peterson.
You know, there's something profoundly unsettling about encountering a person who can harm you deeply, personally, and then carry on as though nothing occurred. It's not merely frustrating, it's disorienting. It violates our most basic assumptions about morality, responsibility, and human connection. And yet this behavior, this cold, calculated indifference, is not uncommon among narcissists. Now the question is why? Why does someone, after causing emotional chaos, manipulating, gaslighting, or discarding another human being, feel no need to acknowledge it? Why do they move on, unaffected, leaving you to sift through the psychological wreckage? This isn't just about rudeness or carelessness. This is about something far deeper, far darker. It's about pathology. It's about identity structures built on illusion and ego. And if you don't understand how narcissists operate, you'll keep expecting them to act like you would, and that's a catastrophic mistake. Tonight, we're going to dismantle that illusion. We're going to look beneath the surface and explore the psychological machinery behind narcissistic behavior. And by the end, you'll see not only why they act like nothing happened, but also what it says about you. If you're still waiting for accountability from someone incapable of offering it, narcissists often operate with a striking degree of emotional detachment, particularly in the aftermath of causing harm to others. This detachment isn't accidental, it's strategic and deeply ingrained. It's one of the core psychological defense mechanisms that allow them to maintain a sense of superiority and control while avoiding the discomfort of guilt, shame, or empathy. When a narcissist hurts you and acts like nothing happened, it's not because they forgot, and it's certainly not because they didn't notice. It's because acknowledging your pain would force them to confront a reality they are psychologically unequipped to handle. At the heart of this detachment is an intense fear of vulnerability. Vulnerability requires an openness to emotions, yours and theirs. For the narcissist, emotions like guilt, remorse, or empathy are threats. They disrupt the fragile persona they've constructed to protect themselves from deep-rooted insecurities. So instead of facing those feelings, they shut them down, they dissociate. They create an emotional distance, not only from you, but from their own inner world. This is why, after an argument, betrayal, or emotionally abusive act, they can appear calm, indifferent, even cheerful. Their emotional detachment insulates them from the consequences of their actions. This mechanism begins to develop early in life, often as a response to trauma, neglect, or conditional love. If a child learns that their needs are met only when they perform, achieve, or suppress emotion, they begin to associate vulnerability with danger. Over time, this internal conditioning hardens into a persona, one that prizes dominance and control over emotional depth. By adulthood, this coping strategy becomes their default mode of interacting with others. Emotional detachment is no longer a choice. It's automatic. This is also why narcissists can seem so eerily composed in situations where most people would feel shame or regret. They have trained themselves consciously or unconsciously to disconnect from the emotional implications of their behavior. Where most people might lose sleep over hurting someone they love, the narcissist remains unbothered. It's not necessarily because they enjoy your suffering. It's because your suffering doesn't register as relevant. Your pain isn't connected to their self-image, and therefore it holds no emotional weight for them. In many cases, they'll rationalize or minimize what happened to keep this detachment intact. They might say, "You're too sensitive," or "It wasn't that bad," or even "You made me do it." These aren't just excuses, they're psychological tools that help them keep the emotional door firmly shut. If they can convince themselves that you're overreacting, then they don't have to feel anything about what they did. This rationalization loop is essential for their psychological survival. Admitting fault would mean admitting weakness, and for a narcissist, weakness is intolerable. What's particularly jarring for those on the receiving end is the complete lack of acknowledgement. You're in emotional turmoil, replaying the event, analyzing every word, hoping for closure or even a small sign of remorse. Meanwhile, the narcissist is posting selfies, attending parties, or talking to you like nothing happened. This cognitive dissonance, the gap between your emotional reality and their behavior, can be profoundly destabilizing. It makes you question your own memory, your own feelings, even your own sanity. That confusion is not accidental. It's part of the narcissist's detachment strategy. If you're disoriented, you're easier to control. Ultimately, their emotional detachment serves as a wall. It protects them from accountability, shields them from vulnerability, and enables them to move through life without ever facing the emotional consequences of their actions. Narcissists are often misunderstood as simply arrogant or self-centered individuals, but the deeper truth is more unsettling. Their lack of empathy is not a flaw that slipped through the cracks of their personality. It's a core feature of their psychological makeup. Empathy requires the ability to genuinely recognize, feel, and respond to the emotions of another person. It involves stepping outside of oneself and connecting with someone else's internal experience. For most people, empathy is natural and even involuntary. But for narcissists, it's absent, suppressed, or selectively applied, depending on what benefits them. Their emotional world revolves around themselves, and anything outside that orbit is treated as a tool, a threat, or simply irrelevant. This absence of empathy allows narcissists to behave in ways that seem unthinkable to the average person. They can lie, manipulate, discard, and betray, and then move on as if none of it ever happened. Why? Because your feelings don't register in their internal emotional landscape. They might understand that you're upset. They may even acknowledge it intellectually. But they don't feel it the way you do. They can observe your tears, your silence, your anger, and still remain emotionally unresponsive. They may mimic concern when it suits them, but there is no genuine resonance behind the mask. What makes this especially dangerous is the way narcissists can weaponize empathy when they choose to. They know what empathy looks like even if they don't experience it deeply. This makes them skilled at manipulation. They can perform compassion when it serves their goals, when they want to draw you back in, avoid consequences, or maintain their image. But this borrowed empathy is shallow and conditional. The moment your feelings become inconvenient or challenge their sense of superiority, the performance ends and you're met with cold indifference or explosive defensiveness. Their lack of empathy also explains their astounding sense of entitlement. Because they do not consider the emotional impact of their actions on others, they believe they should be free to do as they bust without being questioned. They expect loyalty, admiration, and compliance, yet offer none of these things in return. They see relationships not as mutual exchanges, but as stages for their self-importance. If you stop feeding their ego or start asserting your own needs, they react not with understanding, but with disdain or rage. To them, your emotional needs are a burden or worse, an affront. This empathy deficit extends to how they perceive conflict. When you confront them about something they've done, no matter how respectful or measured you are, they interpret it as an attack. Instead of hearing you, they defend themselves with denial, blame shifting, or outright dismissal. They are not interested in your emotional truth because it doesn't serve their narrative. In fact, your pain can often provoke contempt in them because it reveals a weakness they can't relate to or exploit. This creates a dynamic where you're left fighting not just for validation, but for basic emotional recognition. The most painful aspect of their lack of empathy is the illusion it creates in the early stages of a relationship. Narcissists are often incredibly charming at first. They mirror your values, your dreams, your emotions. You begin to believe they do understand you on a deep level. But over time, the mask slips and the emotional vacancy beneath begins to show. That hollow space where empathy should be becomes more and more apparent. You start to feel alone, unheard, and emotionally starved even when they're right beside you. You question yourself, wondering how someone who once seemed so emotionally attuned can now be so indifferent to your suffering. The truth is, the emotional connection was never mutual. It was transactional. It was designed to serve their need for validation and control, not to foster genuine intimacy. Their inability to empathize is what allows them to hurt you without remorse, ignore your boundaries, and repeat patterns of harm without reflection or growth. It's not that they forgot how much they hurt you. It's that it never truly registered in the first place. One of the most disturbing traits of a narcissist is their ability to rewrite reality in order to protect their fragile ego. This isn't simply a matter of lying or manipulating others, although that certainly plays a part. It's a deeper, more insidious process. Narcissists engage in narrative control to preserve a version of themselves that is untouchable, blameless, and superior. When they hurt you and act as though nothing happened, it's not just denial, it's the reconstruction of events to make themselves the hero or the victim, never the perpetrator. This rewriting of reality is central to their identity and key to understanding their behavior. To accept responsibility for harm would mean admitting they are flawed, that they are capable of wrongdoing, and that they might not be as grand or righteous as they believe. This threatens the entire foundation of their self-image, which is already built on shaky ground. So instead of confronting the discomfort of guilt, they rewrite the story. In their version, you're overly emotional, irrational, ungrateful, or even abusive. They twist facts, omit context, and reframe the situation so that they come out clean. This isn't always done consciously, it's often a deeply ingrained survival strategy. But regardless of intent, the effect is the same. Your reality is dismissed, distorted, or outright erased. This manipulation of narrative extends beyond interpersonal arguments. It becomes a pattern in every aspect of their life. When a narcissist tells the story of a failed relationship, they're never the one who cheated, neglected, or abused. They were the one who was misunderstood, mistreated, or forced to react. They don't just lie to others, they lie to themselves. And that internal distortion gives them the psychological license to act as though nothing happened. They've already edited the memory in real time to align with their idealized self. This can be particularly devastating for those entangled with them. You find yourself questioning your memory, your judgment, even your sanity. You remember the words that were said, the pain that was caused, the patterns that played out, but the narcissist remembers something entirely different. They may accuse you of overreacting, inventing drama, or being the problem. Their version of events becomes so confidently delivered and consistently repeated that you begin to doubt yourself. This is what makes narrative control such an effective form of gaslighting. It isolates you not just emotionally, but cognitively. You are left defending your version of reality while the narcissist continues to operate in theirs, unaffected and unapologetic. This strategy also helps them maintain control over those around them. If others buy into their version of events, the narcissist can continue playing the role of the misunderstood victim or the wise leader. They are often highly skilled at presenting themselves as composed, rational, and articulate while painting you as unstable or difficult. And because they can be so convincing, people outside the relationship, friends, family, even therapists may begin to doubt you as well. This external validation of their narrative further emboldens them to continue their behavior without remorse. Over time, the narcissist becomes so invested in their self-created story that any attempt to challenge it is met with hostility. They don't just resist feedback, they attack it. Your effort to hold them accountable is seen as a betrayal, a threat to their identity. They double down, becoming even more committed to the version of events where they are blameless. This rigidity is why apologies, when they do occur, often feel hollow or strategic. They're not rooted in self-awareness, but in damage control. The narcissist isn't trying to repair the relationship, they're trying to repair their image. This obsessive control over the narrative is what allows them to hurt you and then act like nothing ever occurred. In their mind, nothing did occur, not in a way that reflects badly on them. They have rewritten the script, assigned you a new role, and moved on to the next scene while you're still holding the emotional weight of the truth they refuse to acknowledge. Narcissists are masters at avoiding shame, and they do so through a psychological process that is both unconscious and deeply self-protective. Shame, for most people, serves a healthy purpose. It signals when we've crossed a line, when we've hurt someone, or when we've violated our own values. It's uncomfortable, but it leads to growth, reflection, and empathy. For narcissists, however, shame is experienced not as a guide to self-improvement, but as an existential threat. It strikes at the core of their fragile identity and threatens to expose the very weaknesses they've spent their lives trying to hide. Because they cannot tolerate that exposure, they react by denying it, projecting it onto others, or simply rewriting the emotional script altogether. This aversion to shame explains why narcissists often act as if nothing happened after hurting you. Acknowledging your pain or admitting their wrongdoing would force them to confront the uncomfortable reality that they are flawed. That kind of vulnerability is intolerable to them, so instead of reflecting or taking responsibility, they go into emotional self-preservation mode. They may shift the blame to you, accusing you of being too sensitive or misinterpreting the situation. They may even claim they are the ones who've been wronged. This role reversal is not just a tactic to win an argument, it's a defense mechanism to avoid drowning in shame. Projection is one of the most common tools they use to deflect shame. Rather than owning their mistakes or admitting fault, narcissists will project those very flaws onto the people around them. If they've been dishonest, they'll accuse you of lying. If they feel insecure, they'll attack your confidence. If they sense their behavior is being judged, they'll quickly flip the narrative and question your morality or intentions. This redirection is not always conscious, but it's highly effective. It keeps the narcissist emotionally insulated while putting you on the defensive. The result is a conversation where your legitimate concerns are buried under a pile of accusations and confusion. Another method narcissists use to avoid shame is outright denial. They simply refuse to acknowledge the impact of their behavior. This isn't just about forgetting or minimizing, it's a total emotional shutdown. You can describe exactly how they hurt you, recount events in detail, and plead for understanding, but you'll be met with blank stares, dismissive comments, or a cold change of subject. The denial can be so strong that you start to feel invisible. It's not that they don't hear you, it's that hearing you would require them to feel something they can't afford to feel. This is why remorse is so rare in narcissistic behavior. An apology requires one to admit fault, express regret, and empathize with another's pain. These are all experiences rooted in an emotionally integrated sense of self, something the narcissist lacks. Even when they do say sorry, it often lacks depth or sincerity. It's a performance designed to restore harmony temporarily, not a genuine admission of guilt. They are far more concerned with preserving their image than repairing the damage. The avoidance of shame also manifests in their need to be seen as perfect or superior. They construct elaborate facade through appearance, status, charm, or intellect to convince others and themselves that they are beyond reproach. Any threat to that image, no matter how small, is met with disproportionate anger or contempt. This is why even gentle criticism can provoke rage in a narcissist. It's not the content of the feedback that hurts, it's the crack it threatens to create in their armor. Their overreactions are not signs of strength, but signals of emotional fragility. By denying responsibility and projecting their shame onto others, narcissists avoid the inner reckoning that would demand growth or change. They remain stuck in a loop of self-protection, unable to confront the truth of their actions. Their refusal to acknowledge your pain is not simply a lack of awareness, it's a deliberate defense against the shame they are too fragile to face. Narcissists are deeply invested in maintaining the illusion of normalcy because it is essential to preserving their carefully constructed image. To the outside world, they often appear charming, composed, even admirable. This outward persona is a mask and armor built to conceal the emotional dysfunction and instability that lies beneath. When they hurt someone, whether emotionally, verbally, or psychologically, acknowledging it would threaten this mask. It would draw attention to the cracks in their false self. So instead of owning up to their actions or showing remorse, they simply pretend as though nothing ever happened. This performance of normalcy serves to protect their self-image while also manipulating how others perceive the situation. To truly understand why they act like everything is fine after causing harm, you have to recognize the role of perception in their world. Narcissists live for validation. They need others to view them as strong, intelligent, morally superior, or enviable. Any sign of vulnerability, guilt, or emotional messiness conflicts with that ideal. If they were to admit fault or even show that something significant occurred, it might invite scrutiny. It might force them to explain or worse, apologize. That creates a risk they're not willing to take. So they deflect, ignore, or gloss over the incident entirely. This allows them to reassert control not just over the narrative, but over how others feel and think about them. Keeping up appearances is more than just surface-level vanity. It's a survival tactic. The narcissist's sense of self is fragile and unstable, built on external validation and not internal grounding. If people around them start to see them as flawed, cruel, or wrong, it threatens to unravel their entire identity. That's why they work so hard to maintain the illusion. They might continue posting cheerful updates on social media, act unusually upbeat in conversation, or engage in public acts of generosity, all while ignoring the private devastation they've caused. These actions are not random. They're calculated efforts to project normalcy and strengthen the aftermath of behavior that should be cause for accountability. This illusion of normalcy also plays a psychological role in controlling their victims. When a narcissist pretends nothing happened, it sends a powerful and disturbing message. Your pain is invisible, irrelevant, or relevant. You may find yourself wondering if you're overreacting or misinterpreting what has occurred. This is not accidental. It's a form of emotional manipulation designed to invalidate your feelings while reinforcing their dominance in the dynamic. If you're the only one acting hurt or confused and they're carrying on like it's business as usual, the pressure to conform to their version of events can be overwhelming. Over time, this gaslighting effect erodes your confidence and distorts your ability to trust your own emotions. What's more insidious is how this behavior enables the narcissist to repeat the same patterns without consequence. If they can convince everyone, sometimes even themselves, that nothing is wrong, then there's no need to change. No need to reflect, apologize, or repair. They bypass the emotional labor that most people engage in after hurting someone. They avoid growth, sidestep accountability, and move on to the next interaction as if nothing ever took place. This resets the cycle, allowing the harm to continue unchecked. People often underestimate the narcissist's commitment to maintaining the facade. It isn't just for social benefit, it's an integral part of their identity. They are deeply uncomfortable with emotional depth, complexity, or contradiction. Acting like everything is fine after they've caused pain is their way of avoiding the messy emotional landscape that accountability requires. It protects their ego and keeps them in control, both of themselves and the people around them. And for those who are left reeling from the damage, the dissonance between the narcissist's behavior and the emotional reality of the situation can be among the most confusing and painful aspects of the experience. When a narcissist hurts you and acts like nothing happened, it's not just about avoidance or indifference. It's because your pain directly threatens a false identity they've spent their centers constructing. Narcissists don't have a stable, secure sense of self. What they have instead is a carefully crafted image, a facade built from admiration, control, and dominance. It's not grounded in truth or emotional maturity. It's built to survive at all costs. So when your pain reflects back something about them that is cruel, selfish, or hurtful, it becomes a mirror they cannot bear to come out. Acknowledging your suffering would mean confronting parts of themselves they've worked tirelessly to suppress or deny. The narcissistic identity is inflated but brittle. It is composed of stories they tell themselves and others about their superiority, their victimhood, their success, their entitlement. This identity thrives only when it's constantly validated and never challenged. Your hurt, especially if it's caused by them, calls this entire structure into question. If they were to recognize your pain as real and significant, they would have to accept that they are capable of harm. But this conflicts with their internal narrative of being either always right or always the one who's been wronged. So instead they detach, they minimize, they move on like it never happened, not because they didn't notice, but because noticing would tear a hole in the very fabric of who they think they are. This is also why they can become hostile or mocking when you express how much they hurt you. It's not just a lack of empathy, it's an act of psychological self-defense. Your emotional truth destabilizes the lie they live by. Rather than sit with that discomfort or question themselves, they flip the script. Suddenly you're being dramatic, needy, manipulative, or ungrateful. They pathologize your reactions so they can keep themselves emotionally safe. And in doing so, they reinforce their own delusions of righteousness while leaving you isolated and confused. For the narcissist, everything is filtered through the lens of self-preservation. If your pain doesn't serve a purpose, such as gaining admiration for being the one to fix it, or controlling you through guilt, it's discarded. In fact, your distress is often experienced as an inconvenience or even an attack. This is why attempts at genuine communication often backfire. You may speak from the heart, hoping to be heard and understood, but they experience it as criticism or betrayal. They don't hear your words as a plea for connection, they hear them as a threat to their identity, and they respond accordingly, often with defensiveness, gaslighting, or even retaliation. Another reason your pain is ignored is because it holds no functional value to them. Narcissists view relationships transactionally. You exist in their life not as an equal partner, but as a resource, someone who provides admiration, support, or status. When you are hurt, you are not performing that function. In fact, you're demanding something of them: accountability, compassion, humility. These are things the narcissist has not developed and does not wish to offer, because doing so would require vulnerability, and vulnerability feels like death to the false self. So rather than meet you emotionally, they shut down, or worse, they pretend nothing happened at all. Their need to protect their identity even overrides logical memory. They might revise what was said, deny promises made, or claim things unfolded differently than you remember. Not because they genuinely forgot, but because your version of events makes them look flawed. And if they look flawed, they feel exposed. That exposure is intolerable, so they rewrite the script in real time. They may even begin to believe their version, because the truth is too threatening to sit with. The irony is that the more harm they cause, the more committed they become to pretending everything is normal. This reinforces their illusion of superiority and keeps them from ever having to confront the damage they inflict. Your pain becomes a silent casualty in their ongoing war to protect a self that isn't even real.
Let's try that again. That was Jordan Peterson. And I got to ask, why does this remind me of what he was, the whole thing that he was talking about? Why does it remind me of Hillary Clinton? Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative of the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there and reminding you that determinism is a choice.